Hi guys, Maximus Grahamicus here again. I'm going to show you guys what I've been rocking here on Seasons for a little while. The Demon Hunter Cold build spec. I'll put another video together for a fire spec. I have all the stuff for that too. That'll be another video. But this is what I've been using for a long time. I started out with fire, but once I switched over to cold, I haven't really gone back to fire since. And I'll explain why. So here's how it goes, right? So if you're wondering if this is the first video of mine you've ever seen, I multi-box Demon Hunters, but really I'll show you. It's all the same more or less. So got Elemental Arrow, Frost Arrow. It's cold damage. It's cold damage, and that Frost Arrow is actually the most damage of all of them anyways. Even if you were fire, you'd still use Frost Arrow with your fire spec and Call of the Week, because it's the best arrow that you can shoot with Elemental Arrow, because it can break into up to 10 fragments, and those things can all hit for 330% weapon damage each. And they chill the target, and they slow the target. Not that your other stuff doesn't slow it, not that it needs to be chilled, because Call of the Week works against slowed or chilled targets. So it's not like they need to be chilled from Frost Arrow, they just need to be slowed. And, your Cluster Arrow, Maelstrom, that's enough cold damage to keep them slowed forever. So it's not like it's essential for Call of the Week, but it does great damage, and it's because of those fragments breaking off into up to 10 and dealing, up to potentially over 3,000% weapon damage from just that. It might not seem like it can do that much damage, but it can. So Elemental Arrow, Frost Arrow, very, very good, very strong, a lot stronger than people think it is. Cluster Arrow with Maelstrom. Now this is really your big bazooka gun. It's always Cluster Arrow, but it's what rune do you use? So cold, you go Maelstrom. It's the only cold rune, I believe, right? Yeah, cold. Right, yeah, it's the only cold one. Yeah, so you got Loaded for Bear. This would be fire, but yeah. So this is rockets. So this thing here basically releases homing rockets, 5 of them. The initial rocket itself hits for 450% weapon damage, instead of releasing grenades. So yes, the initial rocket itself hits for 550% weapon damage, but instead of grenades, with Maelstrom, it'll drop 5 rockets, homing rockets, 450% weapon damage each. Yeah, it says you gain 1% life per enemy hit, but don't rely on that as a reliable source of health regeneration, because trust me, it doesn't really show. It does not really show that you get 1% per life hit, because it'll seem like there's a lot of dudes there, and you don't really seem to be getting much life regeneration. It is some, but it's not like your life's just going to shoot up because there's a big pack of dudes there and you're getting a lot of life return. It's not that bad. It's not that great, but it's some life return. But what really makes this strong is because there's 5 rockets doing 450% weapon damage each. Alright. With the passive ballistics, it increases the damage of rockets by 100%. It doubles the damage of those rockets to 900% weapon damage each, times 5, 4,500% weapon damage from one cluster arrow. And a good majority of those of that damage, 5 times 900, so yeah, 30, 45. That's just from the rockets, from the homing rockets. And then, of course, over 5,000 with the actual rocket itself. If you hit the target with the rocket, the cluster arrow, and then all the homing rockets hit him as well, it's over 5,000. 50% weapon damage right there. It's a lot. And a lot of it's the homing rockets. And now the best part about the homing rockets is they are like heat-seeking rockets. Now, one difference I'll explain with the fire and cold, and why I prefer cold over fire, is because you don't need as much line of sight or accuracy to deal at least some damage to the target, or even full damage, because of the homing rockets. Now, if you were using Loaded for Bear, alright, how this works is increase the damage of the impact point. That's the initial rocket that's shooting, and it also drops nice little, so it brings that up to 770. Cluster bombs, yeah, I've seen people use this. I've tried it myself, but Loaded for Bear is the best one you can use with this, and it'll drop grenades where the rocket hits. Now, if you've got line of sight, if that sentry has line of sight to its target and it can shoot those cluster rockets, and that thing can hit the target and drop the grenades right at the target's feet, then it'll do more single target damage, but it won't do as good of area effect damage as cold. Now, the problem is in these greater rifts that I'm running in up into the 40s or even 30s, and a lot of greater rifts, if you're basically your gear is just like barely good enough to more or less get through the greater rift, like it's a challenge, you know, stuff's not dying very quickly, and a lot of the time you end up more or less having to hide behind a wall or a corner, or you just can't get great line of sight, and your sentries are going to be shooting a lot of rockets and a lot of stuff into walls, or, you know, it's just because, too, stuff, like, it picks up stuff in other rooms, even though it has no line of sight. And it'll sit there and it'll shoot rockets at the walls, but then the homing rockets will find the target and still hit the target. Alright? Because if you were using loaded for bear, that rocket would just hit the wall, do no damage, and then the grenades would drop right where the rocket detonated, which is right at the ground, again, not hitting the target on the other side of the wall, doing no damage. So, this way, with Cold and Maelstrom, even if your rocket, the first rocket, even if you just, you know, the target is around the corner, alright, and you can't peek around that corner because they're a jailer or there's something, they're going to hit you. You don't want to go around that corner, you don't want to peek. So you can't even get line of sight yourself. You're just line of sighting them. It's fine. You're putting sentries like here straight ahead of you, and then they're shooting rockets and they're shooting stuff over directly to the right of them, and that stuff is hitting right there, and then those cluster rockets are going straight down and hitting the target. So it's like, you know, they can't see you, you can't see them, your sentries can't even see what they're shooting, but because there's so much homing rockets that are just sniffing them out, that's what ends up killing them. And you'd be surprised how often that's really what it comes down to, and you don't really have much choice, because if you peek, you're dead, and dead damage is no damage. So it's better to more or less stay alive and not do full damage but still kill them than to peek and die, or, you know, and you have to get line of sight to do that more or less. So that's why I prefer the Cold, and it does really great area effect damage, and you need a lot of good area effect damage and lots of density to clear these high level greater rifts in time, which can be, you know, just repetition, a little bit of skill, and a little bit of luck. So that's really the main difference between Cold and Fire is the cluster arrow, and then a lot of it is really just the same after that. Sentry, Spitfire turret, even with a Cold build, Spitfire turret shoots homing rockets. Vault, I use Tumble just because I find the best way to conserve discipline when you need to vault a lot, and you know, you can use Rattling Roll. It's a good utility to stun, but you're going to burn through more discipline, and you need to use it as a means of mobility to, you know, clear a lot of area, a lot of distance, because sometimes you got to get through some big maps and you got to move around a lot. And, you know, you hope that it's not like that. You hope that you don't have to do as much running around, but a lot of times, you know, one way or another, you end up having to jump and move a long distance, and having Tumble on there will reduce the discipline cost of your second tumble for 6 seconds. Reduces discipline cost by 50%. So the first one costs 8 discipline, the next one only costs 4. So you can get more vaults in there, and even when you're engaged in combat, you know, you vault once, great. You're maybe out of danger, maybe not, but, you know, you will likely have to vault again soon, or maybe you just want to vault again to, you know, get to a slightly better advantage point, or even maybe just slightly farther away. You vault away again, and, you know, I usually end up doing a couple. I'll do a vault, like a sentry, and then I'll vault again fairly shortly after that to another position. So I like Tumble for not only in combat, for mobility as well. It's great. Companion, it does not matter what rune you use. When you've got M6, all your companion, these are all out, and they're all active, and when you pop your pet thingy, they all activate, so it does not matter what rune you use. Wolf Companion, sure. Multi-shot and Arsenal. Even with Cold spec, multi-shot, you gotta use it. And Arsenal is still the best rune to use. And why? Because homing rockets, and the other runes just don't deal enough damage, even the Cold one. It deals less damage, no homing rockets, no bueno. So, passives, awareness. Use awareness. You're gonna take fatal damage. Alright? But the key is to not take fatal damage more than, you know, twice every 60 seconds. That's a lot more reasonable, alright? Everyone's gonna take fatal damage. Always have awareness on people, because, yeah, you're a demon hunter, you're pretty squishy, you're gonna make mistakes. don't die right away because you made a silly mistake. You know, this is like a get out of jail free card, a smarten up dummy. You got 60 seconds to, you know, get it together and not take fatal damage again. And then, you know, after that, then you're granted one mistake basically every 60 seconds, and use them sparingly. Alright, and then custom engineering, more sentries, make them last a minute. Some people might not think that that's necessary. If stuff's dying really quickly, you know, if it's overkill, it's not necessary. But when you're just trying to get through and it's close, you definitely want custom engineering, especially for Realm Guardians, because you don't want to sit there having to lay sentries all the time. You want to be able to get them up and then start launching cluster rockets and, you know, doing your own burst damage as well. And you got time, and you can do that with custom engineering. Call of the week, yep, everything's getting slowed, and stuff's getting chilled even slightly periodically with elemental arrow, but really it's just needing to be slowed, and 20% damage. Those cluster arrows are always going to be shooting like crazy, slowing stuff, and ballistics for the extra damage. Now, let's look at the gear. So, there's different weapons that have different elemental types of damage on them that you would use for different types of builds. So for fire, it'd be a Balefire Caster. It's a one-handed crossbow, gives you fire damage. But one-handed crossbows have low weapon damage, and they make your sentries basically hit, you know, kind of poopy. But they attack really, really fast, and you can get up to 5 attacks a second on your sentries with a one-handed weapon that shoots really fast, and if you've got like almost perfect attack speed on all your other stuff that you need it on. So you can get up to 5 attacks per second on a sentry with that Balefire Caster in a fire build. But it's the only one that I've seen that has fire damage on it for like a Demon Hunter weapon. So you got that. For cold, you want the Atreyu, which I'm using right here, Atreyus. So they have cold damage is what they come with. You can re-roll the elemental damage on the bow, and no, it does not matter if it says, you know, 1194, 1417 cold damage. That could be fire, that could be physical. You know, if that 10% that I re-rolled just so happened to be on the bow in the first place, like that one, well, guess what? You can re-roll that elemental damage, and yeah, it says cold damage, but if it was physical or fire or anything, it wouldn't matter, because you're still dealing cold damage from your clusters, and from here, you're still going to deal enough cold damage to keep stuff slowed, to keep your Call of the Week up. But at the same time, yes, having cold damage as the elemental, you know, type of extra damage on your bow, like that is right there, that will slow anything that you hit with any type of attack. It will slow them because it is cold damage. So it's good to know, but it's not, you know, it's not necessary to have that cold damage there on the bow. Like, take the highest damage roll that you can get, period, you know, and you'll still deal enough cold damage, you know, to keep stuff slowed. So don't worry about if that's fire or physical. If that's the highest damage roll you got, and that's a pretty good one, you know, keep it. It just so happened that that was cold for me, so, you know, and that's only 4 minimum and 6 maximum off of perfect damage, and 1% cold, and 40 dex. But pretty good. Best Atreyu I've ever seen anywhere. And I've checked the top of the leaderboards. Theirs aren't that nice. So, you got Atreyus there, so you could, depending on what kind of, you know, stats you get with it, you know, you can roll it, but I wanted to make that point too. Once you reach a certain point with your Paragon points, you know, at first you're going to want movement speed on your boots, and then you'd want all res, and then dex and vit. Alright? And then, as you get more Paragon points, you know, enough that you can get your movement speed up and cap it out with just, you know, 10% movement speed from the passive of your pets, from your ferrets. Your ferrets are always going to be out. They can't be killed. They give you 10% movement speed all the time. So basically, you just need 15 Paragon points, 15% movement speed, 30 Paragon points to put into that to cap it out, and then the rest can start going into dex. And then, once you've got enough Paragon points to get 15% there, you know, then drop the movement speed on the boots, and you can replace that with cluster arrow damage. and I'm not actually 100% sure if it will increase the damage of the cluster arrows that your sentries shoot, but my first guess would be no. Just because of my experience with witch doctors and pets and how that works anyways, but you know, whether it does or it doesn't, you know, if anything, if nothing else, it will definitely increase the damage of your cluster arrows that you shoot. And if you're not shooting cluster arrows, you know, once you've got all your sentries up and stuff, and not looking for health orbs and stuff, and doing burst damage, you know, once you've got your sentries up, you're doing it wrong. So get extra cluster arrow damage, because, you know, I'm sure there's somewhere out there a thread or a post that will confirm or deny whether your sentries will actually increase their cluster arrow damage or not, but one way or another, put it on there. Because if nothing else, it's going to increase your damage and you're going to be shooting it. So, rucksack, 2 extra sentries, dex, fit, attack speed, up to 15 to 20%. 20% would be best. 8 to 10% crit, 10% would be best. And then you want 15% sentry damage, 10 to 15% sentry damage, and it can suck to roll sentry damage on a quiver. Okay, so if you can get sentry damage on it, even better. Like if you can, you know, if I had to reroll like the dex or the crit chance, you can't reroll the attack speed, unfortunately, on the quivers. But you know, something else that was easy, if that thing just came with 15% sentry damage, you're sitting pretty, because there's a lot of stats that you can get and a lot of things, a lot of skills that can go on a quiver, and trying to get, you know, the skill that you're after is a challenge enough, let alone the highest damage roll like 15% sentry damage. It sucks, and you have to burn a lot of mats to get that. I either got lucky or I spent a lot of mats to do that one. Alright, so you want the rucksack, you want the Atreyu, you want the boots. Alright, on pants, dex, fit, all res. No armor, people. You don't want armor, you want all res. Your armor is going to be fine enough without anything having an armor bonus on it. I've got over 81% damage, like, from armor. Like, I mean, as a demon hunter, I was surprised a little bit, you know? Like, it's a lot of armor. Your armor is fine. You need all res. You got a, you know, 72, 67, 72, and these are quite reasonable too. You know, they're quite reasonable. You know, you don't want to have no all res, but there will eventually become a point where none of that matters, but still. Dex, fit, all res. Life after kill is useful up to a point, but eventually becomes meaningless. So really, for life after kill, you know, and pickup radius would probably be good to start. You know, those would be good starter pants, but it would be much better to have pickup radius and health orb bonus, an extra health orb bonus or something like that. Pickup radius is really the only useful one that's going to help you out that much. The reason why life after kill doesn't really help you much later on is because stuff's going to pretty much either take you down in one hit, or, you know, or it's going to miss you entirely. So rarely does stuff hit you and not just either pop your awareness or take you down right away once you start getting up into very high levels. And it doesn't matter what, if you add more toughness so that they don't kill you right away, you have nowhere near enough damage to kill them. So if you want to win, you got to go with damage and basically not get hit. So based on that principle alone, it doesn't matter if you've got 1 toughness or 7 million toughness. You know, your backup is your awareness. You know, that's your toughness. Your toughness is, you know, 1 million every 60 seconds. You know, 10 billion every 60 seconds. You can make one critically fatal mistake, you know, every 60 seconds. But it is possible to not get hit and not have them kill you. Witching Hour. Dex, vit, attack speed, crit damage, physical resistance. I mean, physical resistance is, or lightning, or arcane resistance would be probably or cold. Those would be the best resistances, but none of them are really much better than the other, and really defense is not going to win you the battle at the end of the day. So yeah, that stuff helps, but offensively, Dex, Vit, 7 attack speed, 50 crit damage. Dex, Vit, sentry damage. Dex, you can go with Dex and Vit to start, and then once it starts more or less toughness doesn't matter at all. Then replace the Vit with Dex, crit chance, and cluster arrow damage. For amulets, there's choices. The best choice would probably be, for damage, is a Hellfire amulet, because you get a 5th passive, and you can add a 5th passive on it. That's the best option, really. For a DPS point of view, that's the best option. Because another option would be an elemental immunity amulet, like a Countess, or a Star of Azkarath, a Zephyrin amulet, make you immune to fire, Arcane. Arcane would probably be the nicest, because jailers are arcane damage, and that stuff one-shots everybody. Who doesn't love getting one-shot by jailers, right? But still, I mean, it's a defensive thing, and that might be more, valuable than offense, having a elemental immunity amulet, depending on how your stuff goes. But again, too, the premise is that you have to get hit with elemental damage, or more or less use elemental damage, to heal yourself and stay alive. And it's not giving you really any more extra damage. You're not going to kill them faster, you just won't die as quickly, which some people might, say that could win you the fight, and maybe it can. Maybe not dying is the problem. You need to die less. Maybe you need to kill more. I say that if you're dying too much, you're doing it wrong, and you need to smarten up, and you need to learn how to kill stuff without dying, basically, and then you need to start adding more DPS. That's what I'd say. So, for that reason, this guy, he's got Hellfire, and single out, I actually prefer over like steady aim or anything as a 5th passive, because there's a lot with greater rifts. The big gargantuan dudes have a lot of health. They usually have some small little minion guys with them. They'll die first, and them, champions with minions, realm guardians, all these guys have lots amounts of health, and you end up having to fight them by themselves, standing with nothing else around them. And single out will bring your crit chance from what should be 50% up to 75. Adds an extra 25% crit chance to targets with nothing else 20 meters or 20 yards around them. So they will get downed so much faster. You go kill a champion, you take out his minions, and it's just him. And he usually still has about like half health left by the time his minions die. But then he just goes right down, because now he's all by himself, and that single out will help. Group play, Infectious Toxin Gem. Solo play, Zaystone. Enforcer, Bane of the Trapped. Those are your legendary gems. Enforcer, Bane of the Trapped. Infectious Toxin for group play, because the damage amp will stack times 4 and give you 40% extra damage. But in solo, it's only 10%. So you got nothing else to stack with you, so a Zaystone is really your best other option. That's your legendary gems. Taskers, Dex. I mean, there's a few ways you can do this. I mean, best case scenario I would say would be Dex, attack speed, crit gen, basically no vid on here. And if there was any other way, if there was any stat that you had to replace on here for vitality, I would, for damage, I would drop the attack speed. Because the attack speed's giving you an extra 3.4%, 3.44% extra damage from the attack speed. And unless that attack speed is necessary to hit your breakpoints on your sentries for, say, 3.3 attacks per second, like my guys are tuned for, unless that attack speed is necessary to pull it off, then, you could replace that with vitality. And it would increase your toughness by 16%. And then, say drop vitality on something else and add damage somewhere else where it could be more useful than, say, 7 attack speed. So you'd be shifting the stats, dropping vitality on something and adding something else that's going to be more damage than 7 attack speed on your gloves. And you're just switching the stats from one to the other. Like helmet, for example. Because, I would rather have 15% cluster arrow damage than 7% attack speed. This guy, he's crazy. He doesn't have a vitality or on either, but that's because I'm not relying on my defenses to win me the battle. I'm relying on my wits and my damage. So, shoulders, dex, fit, cooldown, sentry damage. It is very, very hard to find a pair of shoulders that actually has cooldown, and you have no idea how lucky I was to actually get that, because a lot of them, almost all of them, are going to come with resource cost reduction, trust me. So if you get one that has either sentry damage or cooldown, or if you're just stupid lucky like I got with this one and got both, you know, that's pretty good. I rerolled the vitality on that one because it was more worth it to make the whole piece a good one. So, but if you can get dex and vit and sentry damage, decent sentry damage, and then reroll the cooldown, that'll likely be the best way to get, you know, your best shoulders in slot. But if you get ones with cooldown and you can reroll the sentry damage, get it up to 15%, cool. You know, it'll likely look something. That one has cooldown too, like this. That's how most of them are gonna drop. You get dex and vit, resource cost reduction, and if you're lucky enough to get sentry damage, you can reroll resource cost reduction for cooldown. That's how most of them are gonna drop. And I've seen a lot, so take my word for them. Take my word for that one. But again, depending on what they come with, that's what you do there. Yes, Stone of Jordan. I would use, you know, Stones of Jordan, I recommend over Unities, even in group play and stuff too, because, you know, having one guy take so much damage that, you know, normally he would have just died and the other three guys would have been fine. But because, you know, he just took so much damage, it didn't just kill him, it killed everybody. You know, it killed him and brought the whole group down with him because, you know, one mortar landed on him. You know, and that can be disaster. You know, wouldn't you rather have one guy go down and then have three guys still up unscathed, and, you know, two guys can keep fighting and one guy can go res, you know, or whatever. But like, you know, have one guy make a mistake and that costs everybody and they all just go down. They weren't near nothing. You know, I don't think a unity is a great idea for group play. For solo, maybe a better option because you can get your follower to absorb half your damage. If you give an unkillable token to him and then put a unity on him and you're wearing a unity, he'll absorb half your damage and he won't take any. So, you know, that's an option, but again, it's a defensive option, and a cold Stone of Jordan is going to give you the most damage, just won't give you any extra defense. So that's not the best one. It's a little better. You know, 20% cold, as much dex as you can get on there. 25 to 30% elite bonus damage. The secondary, I mean, really, if you can get the primary stats good enough, you know, that's the battle right there. Anything like that, secondary stats, just be happy you got the primary stats right. You know, so this one has lightning and melee. I mean, life after kill, pickup radius. It's not like life after kill doesn't help at all. It gives you healing. It's just that, you know, if you're either at full health or you're dead, there's not really much life to be regenerated in between there. It's not like, you know, they're going to hit you a few times and drop you down to 60% health and then you're going to kill them and regenerate that life back up. No. No, it hurts. You're either at full health or you're not, pretty much. Either, you know, your awareness just went off, in which case your health is regenerating back up to 50% anyway, and then once it's back up there, you can either opt to pop your potion, or maybe you should have popped your potion before awareness went off. I don't know. But amulets, you got choices. Hellfire for a passive, better offense. Elemental immunity, defense, and, you know, until you figure out how to, you know, avoid getting hit by that shit, then that might be your better option there. And then a third option, you know, basically anything with an ability on it, as opposed to just a plain old, you know, one of these, which sadly this guy's still using because he needs that crit chance, unfortunately. You know, I have other better ones that I would say would be better, but because he needs that crit chance to hit his 50% crit chance breakpoint, it frustrates me that I have to use that. Anyways, but yeah, you got Hellfire amulets. This is a very nice Leorix amulet, and those skeletons popping out are a great distraction. Oh yeah, the Leorix amulets, they're in people for demon hunters. Nice damage on it too. 8 dex off of perfect damage on that Leorix. Perfect skeletons. Life after kill, cause why not? You know, so that's a nice little, I would say that's actually probably my best, this is my best in slot amulet for this guy, and I would say actually my second best amulet over, you know, overall. I'd say this would be the best choice. This would be the best one. I would love 3 more amulets just like that, please. And this one here would probably be my second best option, and then third best would be a Countess. But if you can find a Countess that its 2 stats that it gets to roll are crit chance and crit damage, and then you can re-roll the attack speed for a socket. I'm jealous, because I've found a lot and I haven't seen any. Starting to wonder if it can even happen. I bet it can, but not for me yet. So I don't have any of them yet, but this is on seasons too. Anyways, so I think that's the best option, but you keep the elemental immunity ones in mind. They can be very helpful, and it can give you a huge tactical advantage against Realm Guardians, and again, you know, that can win you the fight, having that much of a tactical advantage where they can't deal any damage to you at all, basically. You know, sometimes that is the way to go. So that's more or less the gear. Oh yeah, and a Granger ring, of course. Yeah, you need a Granger ring so that you can get your taskers on, because you need 6 or 5 M6 and then taskers, so Granger ring. Dex, attack speed, crit damage. It's best. If you can't get crit damage, crit chance is probably the best other option. You know, you can get up to 6, and it goes 5 to 7 attack speed. 7's the best. Goes 416 to 500. So really, that's 3 dex and 1 crit damage off of perfect for damage on that Granger ring. It's my favorite. Physical resistance, not bad. I mean, really, because physical resistance is the only thing that you stand a chance to take a hit from and not just pretty much die instantly. Because the magic damage, you know, from thunderstorms, jail, you know, mortars dropping on your head, those little orbiter things, one of those things passes through you, an arcane beam even just sweeps you, just clips you on the edge of it, you know, you're done. So it's the elemental damage, really, that's going to more or less one-shot you. But physical damage, you actually kind of do stand a bit of a chance to, you know, take a hit or even 2 and not go right down, or, you know, and that's what a lot of people add extra toughness for, is so that they can get that 2 or 3 hit shield buff before it pops it from, but that's from physical damage. But the reason you can take that, you know, physical damage better than elementals, because of how much freaking armor you got. And again, too, you're giving yourself, you know, a buffer of how many times you can get hit before your awareness goes off, and then again before you go down. But you know, that buffer is only going to last for so long, and you can't just keep, you know, add more toughness, you know, because that buffer is going to drop down to 2 hits and then 1 hit. So, you know, if you add more toughness, you're going to have to drop damage somewhere, generally. It's very, very difficult and almost impossible to add more toughness without dropping damage somewhere, because if you're replacing an offensive stat with a defensive one, unless you can squeeze a stat on there that just didn't exist before, putting a 5th stat or where it had 4 before, you can't really add any toughness or Paragon points. It's the only way you can really add more toughness without sacrificing any damage. So, and again, so you've added more of a buffer, but now you're not going to kill them in time because you've dropped damage. So if you want to progress, you need more damage. And if you want to actually progress, you know, you have to really learn to not rely on that buffer as much. Your awareness, you know, it does not matter how much damage they actually deal to you. They could deal you 100 billion damage to you, but it's not going to kill you because awareness is going to go off. And then avoid 100 billion damage for 60 seconds and you'll be fine. And it's possible. It's the same game mechanics. They don't change. It's just they go down slower and slower, really, is all that really changes. And you need more and more damage to bring them down. So that's pretty much the build and the explanations. I would recommend putting a couple of diamonds in the pants just to top up your all res, because otherwise it's real shoddy without it. You know, to get enough damage, to squeeze a little vitality on there. You know, you get all res on your boots, your pants, and 2 diamonds in there. Some people will use slave bonds for their bracers. I highly recommend Reaper Wraps, because when you grab health globes, it gives you the primary resource, hatred, and that's when you get to do your burst damage. It heals you, but really it's to fill up your hatred. I mean, yeah, heals you and fills up your hatred so you can shoot more cluster rockets. Basically, if there's, you know, if you're killing stuff, lots of big density stuff, and there's health globes dropping all over the place, you know, even if you're at full health, like, you should be grabbing some of those, especially if there's extra ones. There's all over the place. Grab some of those. Grab extra hatred and launch more cluster rockets, more burst damage, you know, bring them down faster. Don't just stand there and look at the health orbs and wait for your sentries to kill them. You know, unload all your hatred on them, shoot all your cluster rockets, grab those health globes, and then do it again. Or even just unload all you got and then grab those health orbs, and then, you know, and then they didn't get wasted. But you shouldn't be at full hatred when you're grabbing health orbs, and if there's lots of health orbs, you can burn a lot of extra DPS. So, you know, that's what you should be doing to do it right. And you need Reaper Wraps for that, because otherwise, you know, or Blood Vengeance. Blood Vengeance as a passive on your amulet, you could pull it off. But for just so you could get all res on there, and again, we already discussed the toughness, and yeah. So that, if you think that all res is going to stop a mortar from taking you down, or a jailer from one shot, and you know it's not. So take the take the resource generation, and, you know, kill them before they kill you. That's the best plan. And that's bracers, and that's Reaper Wraps. And you get the plans from to craft those. You can craft those things. It's a lot of arcane dust to make them, but you get them from Malthael. So he's the boss in Act 5. Very last boss. Go kill him. He'll drop Reaper Wrap plans, and then craft, you know. Hopefully you can craft as many as you can. For cold, 20% cold, dex fit, 6 crit. I think the best secondary on bracers and on your chest is reduces damage from ranged attacks. Because, you know, there's lots of little physical damage, ranged attacks, like dudes hucking spears and shooting little darts and stuff at you and everything like that. And those are physical damage that, you know, it's not elemental damage, so your armor is decent enough if it's, you know, if you got enough physical resistance, some armor, and some ranged or, you know, missile damage reduction, then, you know, that's what you can have. That'll help you. You know, I can actually take a couple of spears from these guys from ranges and stuff like that before these guys will pop awareness. And again, too, because, I mean, it's not that you can never get hit, but there's ways to do it and there's ways not to. A lot of stuff's going to kill you instantly, but if you do it properly, and this is how I do it, and these guys are all ranked on the 4-player leaderboard, the only 4-man party on any leaderboard, US, EU, that has done 40 plus greater rifts without a monk, witch doctor, or crusader to tank and support for them. The only one. So take my word for it, people. I'm doing it right. It's not like they're doing it wrong, but I'm doing it right. I'm doing it so right that I've done it like that, without a tank even. So, and it can be done. It can be done if you, yeah, I hope this video helped, basically. I hope this video helped give you some good ideas, solve a few questions, and explain the cold build and some of the inner workings of it and how it goes. Alright guys, so I hope you liked the video. Please like it, share it, you know, subscribe to the channel and all that stuff, and tell your friends about me. Check the links at the bottom and stuff, and I'll keep cranking out more videos. Alright, cool guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Peace.